I'd love to observe people. That's what I did today while you were having lunch break. I started to do though when I was started doing my PhD, which was on crowd simulations. So why would we need crowd simulations? Crowd simulations help us to improve buildings or to put the human into the center of designing buildings or events. So look at this situation. So I used to commute every day. This is in Munich, and it not really feels very nice. If you see on the right-hand side, the train is just approaching, and you don't have a chance to catch this train because it's just too overcrowded, and in the morning you're not in a good mood, at least for me, and you really feel like, oh my God, it's always so overcrowded. So why is this? Or look at this situation. This happened to me actually this summer at a festival, and I had several beers already, so I really needed to pee, and well, there was a queue in front of the loos. And this time, boys were affected as well, so it was not only a girl's problem, which is normally the case. So why are facility planned like this, and why do we always have to queue? Or look at this situation. This was an entrance situation at Rock im Park, which is a really huge festival in Germany. And it was me taking the picture, and you see the two pillars, and there the entrance was located. And it took us like 30 minutes until we got into the festival. And actually, we wanted to see a show act, and it didn't work out because we really had to queue. So that's why I like to help or improve venues or events by applying simulations. So what is done until now? So when it comes to plan an event or a venue or a building, then you really have to make sure that everybody gets safe out in case of an emergency. So we have in Germany, for example, we have this Musterversammlungsstättenverordnung. This word is really crappy, and it's really like that. I mean, there's regulations, and there's static rules that apply there. So one rule, for example, is that no exit should be located further away than 30 minutes from each location inside a room, for example, like here, or inside a building. A second rule is that each emergency exit has to be at least of 1.20 meter width. That should assure that everybody gets out of the exit and the exit won't be blocked. So I brought an example with me. This is an airport. So you see in the northern part, you see the planes arriving and departing. Then on the western and eastern side, there are the parking lots. Then we have public transport on the western side, and in the south, we do have cabs and buses. And this is the arrivals area of an airport. And you see in the middle of the airport, so in the center, there's a waiting area where everybody is waiting for their beloved ones. So now we're applying these static rules, and we place all these emergency exits. So since the building is quite large, we have to place emergency exits in the middle of the building, which means this is not leading outside, but they're leading inside a tunnel which leads underneath the building and goes up at the street. So let's imagine a fire breaks out inside this building. So I simulated this, and you can see here the result, what happens. And the problem is that a lot of congestion occurred in front of the bottlenecks, like the exits which are located in the center of the building. So this is not a really nice experience of somebody who tries to flee out of a fire, but he cannot walk forward because he has to queue to get out of the exit. So what I observed is that people do not feel comfortable if they have to queue while something bad happening behind their backs. So let's have another look. So let's say, okay, what happens if we do have this building again? And let's say, okay, what if we think that people maybe try to get out of the building the same way they entered it? So maybe we just say, okay, what if these exits wouldn't exist? So I simulate this again. The people walk further away, so they really need a longer way or in a longer distance. But there haven't been any congestions yet. That is because people have longer ways, and then they don't have to, the bottlenecks is not occurring anymore. So, and the funny fact about this was that even though the people have to work further, the total evacuation time wasn't any higher. So a second fact I observe is that people tend to exit the building from where they've entered. So I'd like to ask you now to do two things. So first, here, probably, this one is the closest exit of me standing here. So I'd like you to think of how far is this exit located away from me. So I would guess it's around 10 meters. And the second thing, please point towards the exit I just pointed to. So please point there. All right. So you're very good. So, and there's like probably everybody has thought of a slightly different number than I just told you, like this 10 meters, because we people, we are really, really bad in estimating distances very exactly. But where we are good at, and everybody pointed there, is like topological issues. So we are really good in saying, okay, in which direction do we have to go? And this should be considered when it comes to designing buildings and exits. So look at this poor guy in the middle here. So actually, well, this is a 30-meter radius, so he could walk towards 4 exits, but he doesn't know which one is the closest because it's really hard for us to estimate such things. So we should take into account when it comes to plan buildings that people cannot estimate distances very well. Back to my commuting times. This is another station in Munich, and you see like 3 photos I've taken when the train was arriving, and then the left escalator is leading up, and I was just standing on the escalator leading down, and I thought it was very interesting. I told you I love to observe people. What the people did over there. You see this really empty spot there, and they didn't try to overtake in order to get faster on the escalator up, but they queued very disciplined, and they really knew in a way that it doesn't make sense for them to overtake, because then they would block me as I'm coming down, and so they kept the space empty. So very interestingly, people are not very selfish, but they care about each other, or they think of other people. And taking this one step further, there's this so-called social identity that when it comes to something bad happening, we people tend to help each other and to take care of each other. So one aspect we really have to take into account is that people are social and they help each other. So where are we right now? Right now, we have the static rules when it comes to plan buildings, venues, events, but this is obviously not enough. So we have to take into account human behavior and abilities, and we have to take into account psychological and sociological aspects. So, and this is where the simulations can help us, because simulations can combine these different aspects by taking into account different layers. So starting from the very low level, like the locomotion layer. So how do people walk? So how do people set the next step? So actually, how would I walk down the stage? I don't want to fall, I don't want to bump into other people, I don't want to bump into obstacles, so somehow the computer has to be taught how us people are walking, and this can be done quite well. The second layer we have to take care of is the navigational layer. So everybody of us has a map inside his brain. So it has nothing to do with Google Maps, but it's like a cognitive map. So everybody has like spots, for example, around the home surroundings or where you work or where you go to university, and you know this place very well. And you know like maybe even special ways, and you know how to get from A to B, but if you're somewhere for the first time, there are blind spots in your cognitive map. And this can be done really nicely with simulations. The next layer we have to take into account is the strategy layer. So it really matters whether somebody walks or goes somewhere, like in the morning when he has to go to office, he's probably in a rush or in a hurry because he's already too late, or if he's going to a museum and enjoying his leisure time, or if in case of emergency, if you really want to go away from some harm or some situation. So this has to be considered as well, because it depends on how we behave. And this is actually where we are heading to, and where a lot of research has to be made, is about the behavior layer. So how do we behave? And how do we queue, for example? I mean, there's different cultural differences between Germany or UK. We are not really disciplined when it comes to queuing. As in the UK, everybody is lining up very nicely. Or, for example, what happens if a family walks and then there's an emergency? So you wouldn't leave your kid behind, you would walk backwards, or with friends, so we are not individuals, so we have like behaviors and we interact with each other, and this is where we really have to take into account, and this is where simulations can help us. And if we have a look into the future, then we really have to see that cities are growing, we have to share space, less space or the same space with more and more people, and we have to be able to design buildings and venues in such a way that we feel comfortable and that we can share the space even if it's not so much. So, and this is, I think, where simulation can help us, and they can improve such things, and especially they can prevent like these situations I just showed you in the beginning. And that's why I keep on observing you guys. Thank you.